Hi there, everybody. Welcome to the Greyscalegorilla.com podcast. What episode is this? Are we on like episode 8, episode 9? We've been doing pretty well.
I think.
Yeah, I mean, it might be double digits now, man.
I think we're double digits.
Well, I'm Chris, and then we've got below me
Nick.
on my
I'm
screen.
Nick here.
And there's Nick.
I'm on the other side. I'm Chad.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, guys.
Hey.
How are you? Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
How's everyone's holidays going into? We got the cold weather going. I biked to work this morning, and the first time that it was frosty below freezing.
Ooh.
And it's a whole new world out there with
It's
the
cold.
with the cold bike ride.
We've been in that perfect weather where you can go outside and do like exercise or activities and then not really be sweaty. Like it keeps you like right in that perfect zone where it's cold if you're not doing something. But
true.
if you start working
Right.
out, then you're like, oh, why did I bring this coat? This is great.
Then you take it
Yeah,
off and you get hypothermia when you start to get sweaty.
Well, what happened this week? We let's do a little bit of Grayscale Gorilla news, and then we can maybe start talking a little bit about what we were talking about last week. We got a lot of awesome feedback, tons of comments. Probably our most listened to podcast episode, maybe ever, was last
Wow.
week. So if you haven't heard that one and you're listening to this, be sure you go check that one out. It's all about the PC and Mac news over the last couple weeks, and just kind of talking about 3D through the eyes of Mac users who have been in kind of the
Traumatized?
traumatized,
Abused.
but also kind of the predominant users of Cinema 4D and what the heck we're all going to do with all this stuff. So anyway, check that one out. Other Grayscale Gorilla news we could get out to everybody. The new site. Oh my gosh, we have a new website.
Woohoo!
This is a long time in the making. A lot of this project started in, I want to say May.
Yeah.
Getting this site out, and mainly for those of you who are customers, the big change is that you're going to have a login area. So if you own any Grayscale Gorilla products, you can actually go to your login. It's what do they call that page? Admin. Not admin.
It's a customer account page.
Account page, and you can go there and log in, use your email that you purchased with. You might have to get a new password just because you didn't have a password originally. So you could just ask for a new password. It'll go to your email just like any other site. But the important part is you could then go in and download your software. We know a lot of you guys are freelancers. You're going to different computers. You want to be able to access your software. So that's the biggest change of the new site. Obviously, we have a new design that hopefully simplifies the process of finding tutorials, finding blog posts on our site. You can search for anything. And the big change is that it's actually the big change on our side is it simplifies a lot of the behind the scenes for us. So we've been actually waiting to launch some new plugins, some new products until this store and site were all set to go, because it's going to make things not only easier for you guys, but also easier for us. So stay tuned. We have some products ready to go. I mean, I know we've been teasing one since April, May, or June. When did we first talk about HDRI Link?
Oh my God.
It must be NAB, yeah.
Yeah.
So word started getting out. I guess we got the word out at NAB about HDRI Link, and we also showed it at SIGGRAPH. And man, the response from everybody has been really cool. It's one of the times where we start teasing a product out like that, and we got such an overwhelming amount of emails, people on Twitter saying like, when the heck is this thing coming out? And it doesn't hurt that Locked and Loading is using it on like every one of his renders right now, or for like all summer.
He's been teasing it for like months.
I think since before NAB.
Yeah.
David's been using it and testing it for us since before NAB. So he's got all this great renders out there. When they ask, how it was lit, he's like, "Oh yeah, HDRI Link," and everyone goes, you can't buy that right now."
What is that? I want that now, please.
So we're gonna have some news this week coming out about it. If you guys light and use any one of these third-party renderers that have been popping up, this will be some big news for you guys. Really excited to get that out. But other than that, please check out the new site. If you see any crazy links, anything down, you guys are like our closest buddies here. If you see anything, let us know. We could go fix it. Make sure the site is working 100% for everybody out there. Excited about that. What else? What else we got here? So last week, I'm still on a Mac. I'll give you guys a week by week update. I'm still on my iMac,
Man.
but we could talk about that stuff as it happens. Anything else pop up that you guys want to share that we can talk about today?
We had a few things that we didn't have time to cover last week. Some other announcements. I don't think we touched much on the Adobe announcements, and then we also didn't touch on the new announcement from Maxon about their partnership or upcoming GPU renderer. So what do you guys know about these two things? Is there anything that you saw in these press releases or in the Adobe videos that stood out?
Oh, geez, I haven't seen the Adobe videos.
Yeah, there's a whole slew of there's like a whole slew of stuff that they're developing and updates to. I think they rolled out Creative Cloud updates. So now if you update your Creative Cloud, I think it's all like 2017 stuff, and I haven't really dug into it too much, but apparently there's some enhancements to After Effects and enhancements to, I think, Cinema 4D Lite or whatever that's called, right, Nick? Am I mistaken?
Yeah, I also, because of all the site madness for the last week, I've been a little bit heads down in that. So I think we may have to poke around and see what's new, and maybe talk about it next week.
Fill us in, Chad.
Yeah, or Chad.
Well, one of the only thing that I can kind of remember, and I'm not a huge After Effects a fan or user. I mean, I use it, but it's definitely not like my favorite tool, as anybody that follows me knows. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely getting there. They've got some pretty decent enhancements. One thing that was kind of interesting to me was the this new 3D engine that they're coming out with for beginners, and it's called I believe it's called Felix. Let me just double check that. But yeah, if I'm right, it's called Felix, and what it is it's kind of like a it's called Project Felix. Okay, so it is a 3D application for non-3D people. And when I say that, I mean that what Project Felix is it's for art directors and people that need to put comps together using 3D assets, but they don't have any idea how to use a 3D program. They probably don't even own a 3D program, but they do have Creative Cloud and they know Photoshop. So what Project Felix is it's a way for them to kind of go online and see this library of 3D objects and drag them into a comp. And it kind of, I think, auto-aligns to the horizon and tries to make it easy to set up your stuff. You can even render in there, and it's very drag and drop. It's like really, really simple to use, and which is kind of cool. I think it kind of reminds me, for those of you who are familiar with TurboSquid's Pixel Squid, which is kind of a 3D model asset online thing where you can kind of pick a 3D asset and choose the angle that you want to see it from and put it into your Photoshop comp. Well, this is kind of like that on steroids, where this is its own app where you can bring in your own background image, you can select a material, drag and drop it on there. But what I think is interesting about it is that it's another thing, getting back to our themes of last week, it's another thing that's bringing 3D to maybe non-3D people, which I think is cool. A lot of people are saying that, it's just BS 3D. It's like, intro level BS. But you know what? It's actually a cool way for people to learn the concepts, I think. So check that out. It's kind of cool. I can see art directors using it.
I mean, any technology that opens it up for more people, I've always been excited about. Yeah, there's always the higher kind of pro level people are like, well, they don't even say XYZ or something in there, like that are a little bit like maybe they think it's too beginner. But yeah, you're right. It's anything that pops up like that just gives people access to make more stuff. It's kind of it's almost like when digital cameras, which was kind of I guess the revolution I went through that was so fast and so drastic, where at first digital cameras and being able to take a photo and look at it right away was so expensive. It was like $5,000, $10,000 and up, and very quickly it became $1,000, and then really quickly after that it became $200, $300, $100, and then now they're in every phone, right? And so 3D is going to be a lot longer process for that, and it's definitely not as like ubiquitous as a photograph is. But that process of like scaling down, and giving that technology the ability to be used by more and more people is just always a good thing. So I'm going to go check that out. And I also saw that Maxon, I think, also has a way to render directly in After Effects where you don't have to necessarily jump out to Cinema 4D either.
Yeah, that's new, right? To this whole new update, right?
Yeah, I haven't.
Hasn't the bridge done that for a while?
Well, there's some kind of new announcement for it. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, and I've been meaning to do this, and I mostly apologize to the listeners. I am behind on so much news and everything because of this new site and everything that went into it. I feel like I'm just now crawling out from under the rock. From what I understand, it allows you to build and manipulate even like. Let's take 3D text as an example. I think now you can actually extrude text in in After Effects without having to open Cinema 4D, but it is using their render engine.
Interesting.
So I'm gonna I might be lying to everyone right now, but that's how I read it. That's how I read the release, and that seemed really interesting to kind of. I think that's a big step for having Cinema 4D in After Effects. What's interesting about that, like they announced that when the bridge and Cineware and all that stuff was 4 years ago now, maybe?
Yeah,
3-4 years, and to me what happened was. I thought it was amazing. That was chocolate and peanut butter for me. I'm an After Effects guy, and Chad, I'm going to ask you in a minute where you do your compositing. But I love After Effects. That was my first kind of love to get into all this stuff, all this motion design. And when I saw that you could open up Cinema 4D in After Effects, not only open it, but it comes with a free a light version of Cinema 4D built into every version of I got to get my terms of every version of After Effects. I was like, everyone's going to use this, and just either the word didn't get out, or people weren't as interested in adding 3D stuff to their After Effects as they should, or maybe they were okay with Element and they were happy with the Element 3D workflow, which is amazing, but also something you have to purchase, right? So I was just like, man, everyone's going to be opening Cinema, and it just didn't happen. And, I don't know why that is. And I think something like this that might get people into trying it is going to be better for everybody, right? Because I used to do this thing at talks, and I'd say, who owns Cinema 4D? And nobody, or I'd say After Effects first. Who owns Creative Cloud? Who owns that? Who uses After Effects? And a lot of people would raise their hand. It'd be at like a HOW conference. And then I'd say, who owns Cinema 4D? And almost everyone would put their hands down. I go, well, did you know you actually do own a light version of Cinema 4D? And walk them through the process. And it really opened up people's eyes to what was possible. So I don't know. I'm interested in more of these kind of tools that allow people to experiment with 3D without calling it 3D. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that, to all the pros out there who are listening to this, talking about Project Felix and this kind of intro level tool, you're all probably saying, who cares about that? Let me tell you why this is good for you. What that means for you is, as you're sitting at your desk not wanting to do some BS, comp for an art director, they can do it themselves now. They don't need, they're not going to bother you with some generic 3D comp of, some BS background that you don't want to do. So think about it that way. If you just kind of like let yourself think about it that way, like, oh, now this person's going to go off and be able to make these frames themselves. They're not going to bother me. So that could be a good thing for them. But yeah, I just sent you guys the link to the Adobe what's new, and in terms of the new 3D composition renderer in the new update to After Effects, looks like you can now extrude 3D type directly in After Effects. So you could take a 3D layer or a type layer, and extrude it and render it right there in your timeline.
Is that through Felix or is that through?
Sorry,
Cinema?
I switched gears really quickly there. It's through the new update to After Effects, the new Creative Cloud.
Cool.
So we'll throw a link to all this in the show notes. But yeah,
if anybody wants to see the show notes, we got them up on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, we'll have it in the description. You could also go to iTunes, where we also that should have all the show notes, and also on our website.
Yep.
Any other notes from there? Okay, so what are you compositing in, Chad? If it's not After Effects.
So, a lot of people ask me that question. I do use After Effects. Whenever I'm doing anything that's going to require a lot of timeline manipulation or typography or more of a 2D look or approach, I'm in After Effects, no doubt, if I have audio and all that stuff. But if I'm compositing my 3D, I'm in a node-based compositor, and I do not have a budget for Nuke, so I use Fusion, because Fusion is very cheap, and it does a lot of the same things that Nuke does. So, node-based compositing, I think, is definitely anybody out there that's kind of looking to take their 3D compositing up to the next level. You're probably looking at Nuke or Fusion, and there's pluses and minuses for both, but node-based compositing is very much a powerful way of compositing your 3D, and even your motion design work can benefit from that workflow as well. I think that I've been hoping for After Effects to get some sort of node-based workflow for the past 10 years. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. I wish that it would, because node-based workflows are really intuitive and fun. At least I think so. I think there's a lot of people out there that are afraid of nodes.
Nodes are great.
I'm here to say yes. Thank you, Chris. Nodes are great, and you should not be afraid of nodes.
Yeah, I was skeptical, as I guess I always am, of not using After Effects. I grew up with it. I feel like I knew every corner of After Effects. And when somebody's like, that would be a lot easier in another program, I'll be like, I don't know. Then I started running into problems in After Effects, specifically with 3D. Now, before I got into Cinema 4D and I was doing all that, just like more traditional animation, I could never see any reason to go anywhere else. But as I started getting passes out of Cinema 4D and understanding what that meant, getting an ambient occlusion pass and getting reflection passes separately, I ran into some problems. And I remember specifically going like, oh man, I just wish there was a way I could reuse this layer like down here and then reuse the output of this layer over here. And I remember my friend looking at me going like, that's what I've been trying to tell you for
the power of nodes.
That is nodes. I'm like, yeah, well, okay, I see. Like, just take. And then once I saw Espresso and how Espresso works in Cinema 4D, and starting to learn what was possible with that language, then I really was like, okay, this does make sense to my brain, where I didn't think it would. But that kind of flow-based, node workflow does make sense. I love my After Effects, I guess.
Well, I think there's like a natural kind of, before I knew how to use anything node-based, I was definitely like intimidated by it because it looks very technical. It looks like, oh my gosh, you have to know what every little thing is in order to figure out how to put this complex node structure together, whether you're building a shader in Octane or Arnold or node-based compositing. The same idea is there. And if you don't understand the fundamental idea behind node-based anything, then yeah, it's freaky and it's scary and it looks really complex. But I'm here to say it's not. If you just like think about everything as being like a pipe and plumbing and water going from one end of a pipe to another end of a pipe, and try to start simple and try to like get the idea of what nodes are and how they work, then you'll find yourself thinking about wow, I almost wish I could model like this. Like I wish it was like a procedural node-based way of modeling something, which actually you can in Houdini, but you start to find out all these ways that you wish you could use nodes. Chris, what do you like about nodes, Chris?
I don't know. It's just that's the way my brain works in a lot of ways. I mean, I don't get to use it for too many different things. I primarily know it through Espresso. Mm-hmm. But I'm familiar with the way it works and everything else, and it's just I don't know all the time. And for anybody in Cinema 4D who doesn't you can't think of like maybe in a texture context of how you would use this. When let's say you have a bump channel and you want that bump channel to also be in your color channel, so you copy and paste it. And then you put that into a colorize. Okay, cool, that works fine. But then later you're like, oh, I need that noise to be bigger. You have to go and change both of them. So it's almost like you can do an instance of it, but instead of it being an instance where you have to go back and reference it all the time, you get to see all the stuff laid out right in front of you and see where everything flows from one to the other. And that's where that stuff would get just incredibly useful and powerful. And I mean, people have been kind of asking for node-based materials in Cinema 4D for like 10 years too.
Yeah.
I think playing with Arnold nodes, which kind of look like Espresso, really, if you're familiar with Espresso. Arnold nodes was opening my eyes to some of the capabilities. It was good. I actually watched Chad's Arnold variation node, or try to get random variation of colors, and really seeing how that workflow was set up with nodes, and it was cool. It's like it opened my eyes to even texturing in a way I'd never even thought about.
Yeah, I think that getting back to your original statement about After Effects and kind of once you start to build a complex comp in After Effects, or even a complex shader in Octane or Arnold or something, you start to realize that you really couldn't do what you could only get so complex without really needing that ability to instance stuff and really being able to optimize things. And that's really kind of what it boils down to. And Chris, I totally agree. Like it once you kind of get through your brain, like, okay, so I can use this one node anywhere, like multiple times in my shader tree or my comp or whatever it is that you're making. And that way, if I have to go back and change it, I change it once and it propagates through everywhere that it's being used.
Exactly.
Like that type of idea is just like, what? Yeah, that's great.
I thought pre-comps would solve that. And every time somebody explained it to me that way, they're like, oh, I could do that. It's a pre-comp. Mm-hmm. I just make that pre-comp, and then I can instance the pre-comp, and I could change whatever I want inside. However, when you start layering things on top of that if you change one thing about it, like in Chris's example, where one's in a color channel and one's in a bump channel, it's like, oh, actually, I couldn't do that, right? Because they're just pixels, right? So the ability to take data and really like morph it around and use like, okay, I want to use this bump, but black and white over here, and I want to use this bump and inverse over here, and I want to use this, those things are. The pre-comps get real tricky when you start to do those kind of things. Well,
not to mention, like you start like getting too heavy. If you're like a pre-comp maniac, and I've worked with some compositors that pre-comp everything, and it's like a rat's nest trying to decipher what the heck is going on in that comp.
Yeah, it's Inception. Like,
you're
deeper,
like, wait,
deeper,
what?
deeper.
And there's what always blew me away is like you could go into that like semi-looking node view to try to like decipher what the hell's going on in this comp.
Oh yeah, that doesn't help.
And like you're like, wait, here's the best thing about After Effects is just how fast you can get up and running and create stuff. The worst part about it is its inability to pick up a comp a year later and understand what the hell you did.
You need it all in your head.
Yeah, because
so many things in life are like that. It's like, I can do this right now. I've got all the variables in my head. This is coding, and even Espresso. Like, you open it up and you're like, I know where these things are, or unorganized files. It's fine while you're working on it, and then step away for even a week. Totally. And then come back to it. You're like, oh, why did I do this to myself? Why didn't I name things or organize just a little bit?
Oh my God, dude. That's me to a T. I preach that stuff, but if you saw my scene files, oh my God, they're awful.
Nobody wants to open my After Effects scene files.
My stuff is only organized if I know I'm passing it off to someone else.
Yep, exactly. Where you're going to be judged by someone.
Yeah, someone else is going to see this. I can't let that happen.
You know what? Open up nodes for me mentally was seeing when I first saw nodes, it took a long time until I saw it. It might have actually been Espresso when I really looked at it and go, oh, okay, this makes sense. Thinking back to my audio years was really helpful for me as a mental model. Is if anybody's ever used like Reason or played around with analog, mixing or any kind of synthesizer,
even
type
pedals,
of,
even
like,
foot pedals.
Yeah, and foot pedals is actually the ultimate analogy to like Espresso to me, was the ability to feed a signal in and then affect it in a certain way and then export whatever that signal is to either the next box or to the speakers, or maybe you need a headphone output, you need it for monitoring and like a mixer and a bunch of footboards and maybe some keyboards with like different outputs, where it was like the mental model for me, where now I get it. I can actually hit this note and I could record it clean. Like I could record the clean signal and then I could split that off and run it through a fuzz box and record that. I could also split that off and run it through an echo and record that. And now I have multi-channels that I can affect. And if I ever change the original source, which is just this note or this texture, whatever your model is now, that it goes and filters back through everything like a signal flow. And that really started to make sense. In fact, when we made Signal, the plugin that was essentially, in my mind, musical stomp boxes, but for animation, we used a guitar pedal for the logo. As confusing as that was to everybody,
It made perfect sense to you.
To one
Everybody
person,
else was
maybe
like, wait,
two.
is this audio? What is this?
Yeah, like we have, a noise node and we have a sine wave node, and we basically, have our signal flow. What goes in? Okay, well, what goes in is your base animation. Do you want to adjust it and tweak it and add noise?
Right.
Well, just turn up that stomp box, right? Turn up the echo. Turn up all these things. So when that all, I guess I'm just bringing it up because if anybody's out there and they're scared about nodes, like think about other signal flows that you do know about, and it made it a little bit more comfortable for me to approach.
Agreed. Nodes are cool. Nodes are cool.
I should. I gotta play with Fusion. Sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
You also, Chad, you mentioned Cinema 4D renderer.
Oh yeah. So they are releasing, or they announced, they didn't really say when they're releasing it, but it is a GPU renderer that's going to be native to Cinema 4D, and it's based on the AMD Fire GL renderer, which came out in 2014, and since it came out in 2014, I think AMD was putting it into, or at least allowing developers to put it into Max and Maya. So if you want to check out what this is going to be, you can actually just Google AMD Fire renderer. It's really hard to say that word, by the way.
I've been typing it a lot lately.
I know, renderer.
renderer.
It's like saying rural juror. If you're a fan of that show, and whoever knows that, it's a little side reference. Anyway, so yeah, it's you should check it out. Google it, because it's pretty much the same. The technology hasn't really changed. What makes it different is that it's OpenCL, so you're going to be able to hopefully use it cross-platform. From what I've seen, not in the Maxon implementation, but I've been watching the 3ds Max videos of it, and I'm not super impressed. I'm hoping that Maxon brings something fresh to it.
They sprinkle some Maxon magic in there.
Yeah, sprinkle some pixie dust on there. I also think that, yet another renderer in the game. Oh my God, like there's so many right now. It's ridiculous. But yeah, so that's there. And then Cycles is also, I've been seeing a lot of people posting about Cycles, and which is interesting. I've seen some good stuff coming out of some of that. But yeah, so, more pile on another renderer. Just throw it on the pile.
Yeah, why not?
So what else? See how many we can get to.
Toss it on the pile.
Yep.
We'll check it out later.
We'll check it out later.
Those wine of the month clubs?
Yeah, that's what we need.
Yeah, I'm thinking, you just subscribe. We're gonna send you a new render every month.
It'll only cost you like $5,000 a month.
a little bit of training, and we'll all learn together. Yeah, I have seen some good cycle stuff coming out. And yeah, even if you just go to Instagram too, kind of search. That's a good way to see what different renderers look like. Is to go to Instagram and search the hashtag.
Yeah, no doubt, dude. That's definitely a good way to do it. But yeah, and I'm going to go off on a little tangent here because that whole thing kind of started this debate with me and a friend of mine about what's the studio going to do? You know, like I have a theory about it, but so studios are predominantly CPU based because they've just invested all this money in their render farms. And so the independent people are now moving towards GPU. It's a lot more cost effective and yada, yada, yada. So what happens to the studio in 3 years? Are they going to continue to invest in CPU rendering and maybe stick with Arnold or RenderMan or whatever, or are they or is everybody just gonna eventually taper the CPU off and bring on GPUs and have basically everybody's workstation will be a render farm? Because that's kind of how I think it's gonna go. I'm curious what you guys think.
Yeah, I think there's definitely legacy CPU render farms, right? Like everyone's got their a lot of big studios have their basement, but I can't see them adding on to it.
Right.
I can't see them like replacing it with a bigger CPU farm when you can get similar power with way less space. There's still a lot of power consumption you got to figure out and a lot of heat. But to go parallel and to go CPU or GPU just seems like the way it's going, at least for now. Does all that technology come from the way that video games were pushing this? Like, is that why all this GPU stuff is so fast and so beautiful? That's
a good question, Chad. Like, when did we suddenly shift from one to the other, and what was the
catalyst?
Why? Yeah, what was the catalyst for this?
I think because the architecture and somebody's way more knowledge. There's probably a million people more knowledgeable on this than me, but the way I understood it was that the pipe is much easier to make bigger on a GPU than a CPU, and that comes from power, heat distribution, all that sort of thing. So the ability to make a fatter pipe is easier on a GPU than it is a CPU. And I used to know some of the details on why that was, but I've since forgotten them. But yeah, that's essentially what it is. And I think they also they're not responsible. Maybe, I don't know. I'm speaking purely from my old memory about the subject, but they're also not responsible for driving your entire system. They're only responsible for delivering graphics. So I imagine maybe if CPUs maybe didn't have to do as much as they do, maybe they would be faster, better. I don't know.
As a follow-up question, I could be completely off on here, but I remember back when when I'm talking about Half-Life 2, when Half-Life 2 was coming out and they were showing all that cool render engine stuff they were doing, like all the graphics card where they're doing like real-time refraction and real-time reflections and all this stuff. And I mean, it looks kind of crappy now as compared to what we have these days. But at a certain point, it's like, okay, they have refraction happening right now in real time. And if I hit render in my 3D program, it's going to take a minute to do that. And they're doing it in real time from any angle, rotating around. Like, why doesn't somebody just put that into the 3D program? Like that's
essentially
because it's so different. It's like an engine thing. It's not all those things that you saw were approximations. They weren't real.
Sure. But at a certain point, you get to the point where it's like those are indistinguishable.
No, and that's really kind of what you're seeing happening now with Atoy and Octane and the VR thing. They're getting their light field technology happening in is it Unity? I think they had it, the announcement. I think it was Unity. Yeah. So I mean that line is blurring right now, and it's pretty wild. And think about like where we are. Think about how fast graphics cards have come, or how fast they develop compared to CPU. Like if, let's say, you got the new Kaby Lake processors for Intel, it takes a really long time to implement those into any sort of product, because that's like a fundamental hardware change that a computer manufacturer has to go through. That's why you see all these computers releasing right now, even the Surface Studio, coming in with like a pretty, not a dated, but it's like a 1 or 2 generation old CPU. It's really hard to implement those. Whereas a graphics card, just plunk, put a new one in, you're good to go. So they can iterate faster. They can put out more because they don't have to worry about these giant product cycles. And so that leads to more innovation and faster. And
and wasn't it a little bit about what you said too, Chad, which is the accuracy can be lower without consequence. Mm-hmm. Like if you miss the accuracy on a CPU, like your database might be wrong. But if you miss the accuracy on a GPU, it's like that pixel was the wrong color for like a 60th of a frame. So like from what I'm understanding, it's a little bit to do with, and maybe we should change the name of this podcast to like, I may be totally wrong, but
people in the comments are like, these guys don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Welcome back to another episode of I may be totally wrong, but
I want to subscribe to that.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's some of the way that I'm reading it is that you can actually sacrifice accuracy for speed in some cases, and rounding and guessing without breaking too much stuff. The other one is, I just think the push of video games is making that technology speed up. Mm-hmm. Chips got to a point where 99% of the public can now do their work on like a little laptop.
Yep.
Like they have an internet connection, they have a decent video card, they have decent everything, and most people with most normal jobs could just do it. Now there's a few kind of types of work that are pushing all this stuff forward. 3D is one of them, right? Computer graphics. And the other one that is huge that makes a ton of cash for everybody involved is video games. And so to speed up these cards and to make better looking graphics and to make them smaller and to put them in phones and to put them in portable PlayStation and whatever, like all that stuff, it seems that everybody's incentivized to like get that faster and faster and more beautiful. And it's like a instant visual thing to go like, wow, the basketball players look way better over here than they do on this platform.
Yeah,
right?
That's a good point.
Like,
you're saying there's not as much incentive for the CPU development as there is for the video cards.
Yeah, and I don't know. And part of
as far as mass market appeal, like that doesn't sound wrong to me.
No, it sounds completely right. And I wonder how different it would be if maybe in some bizarro world the CPU is actually more important than the GPU in gaming. How much further would this CPU be at this moment? You're absolutely right, though. It's hit a point now where the CPU is as powerful as the average working person needs. That's probably, getting back to our talk last week, that's probably why the MacBook Pro is not really all that awesome. It's awesome enough for the average person.
So you just slap the word pro on it.
Yeah, exactly. So there you go.
Well, I mean, not to get back to that talk, but I am thinking about other things that do need more speed. Things like hitting render in Premiere and kicking out an hour's worth of 4K footage with color correction on it takes forever. So like there's still
even they have GPU.
That's true.
The Mercury playback engine. That's what I use when I'm on Premiere. It's a CUDA thing. It's an NVIDIA thing again. But even them, compositing engines too. Like After Effects takes advantage of the GPU when it can. Same thing with Nuke and Fusion. They try to take advantage of it. It's unfortunate to me that the price of the CPU hasn't gone down much. If you want to get like a dual 10 core or a dual, even a dual 8 core, those are like thousands and thousands of dollars. And I can get a GTX, 1080 or a 980 for, under $800, and it's insane. Like, I don't get it. Like, why can't CPUs be cheaper? I don't
sure
know.
there's a reason.
I wish they were, because honestly, I love using Arnold, and that's a CPU renderer, obviously, and I like seeing more buckets and going faster and being able to iterate. It's really expensive if you try to like match what you've created on the, like, I have 4 GPU cards. I know I'm like I'm a weirdo. I know that that's more than most people have, but if I tried to make that same in power investment in CPU that I have in GPU, I would have spent 3 times as much on my workstation.
Right. Well, hey, that reminds me, as we wrap up, this one has to be a little bit shorter today. But that reminds me, people want to know what your machines are. Now it's easy for me because I got a dumb Mac that I just bought. I could send them a link. But your machines, Chad and Chris, people have been asking, especially on last week's episode, what machines you guys are running, because I think people are interested in what people that do 3D for a living are running. So
this is a good question. I think I want to hear. So a friend of mine asked, I want to buy a laptop, and Chris, I know you just bought a laptop. Mm-hmm. So I want to hear more, and I'll talk about my system last, but I want to hear, I'm thinking about a laptop too, because mine's kind of on a, getting a little old. Tell me about what you bought, Chris. People out there are wondering, is there a PC laptop that we can do 3D on?
Well, I bought, based on Casey Hupke's recommendation, I got a Razer laptop. They got a couple different flavors, and I think they usually just call the newest generation of the new Razer. So I just got the best one that I could get, and it's just a nice PC laptop.
And that's the one you're using right now?
Right now.
And did you get that one? Because now I know that Razer has the Stealth, which is like the smaller, more of an Ultrabook style laptop. It's only like a 13-inch display, but it's got pretty good specs.
Yeah, I'm on the page right now.
But you got the more like...
Yeah, there's Stealth, Blade, Pro.
You got the beefier one. It actually has like the colored keys and all that, right?
Yes.
And
how do you Razer Blade, I think.
Yeah, dude, it's got RGB keys,
change.
It's
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's the stupidest thing, but
I'm pretty sure the laptop comes with a vape pen, but I'm not certain on that. Again, I might be wrong, but
dude, it's purely superficial. But like when I'm playing a video game like Overwatch, like the keyboard will change colors depending on which keys are available to hit. And when the game starts, it'll do like a shockwave animation through the keys with different colors.
That's kind of cool, actually.
It's craziness.
Okay, I love that. I was rolling my eyes, but that's kind of cool.
I know that, like, you want to hate that, but it's kind of cool. Yeah.
So that
what's the screen like? Is it pretty high res?
It's really nice. I mean, I'm shifting between this and my MacBook Pro Retina, and I don't see a visual difference. Like not any one that jumps out at me. Like you were talking about that last time, Nick. Mm-hmm. And if it's worse, it's not worse enough for me to notice.
Okay.
Well, here's a kind of an interesting idea, and I know we got to wrap up. Why don't we make a page or somewhere on the site where we all list all the hardware we're using right now, mm-hmm. and maybe even I'm kind of brainstorming out loud, but maybe we even all do a render on a similar scene and let everybody know.
Like, we should just run what's it called? Cinebench. Yeah, everybody just put their Cinebench scores next to your.
I don't want to shame you guys too much. No.
This is the point. Everybody can have their, because we do different things. You spend more time making pretty renders. Like I'm not doing that as a general rule.
I would love to know the Cinebench score of that laptop though, because I'm sure I could find it, but I'd love to see what you.
It was like the third thing I installed just to see it, but
yeah. So let's get that page together. We'll all send a little link to what we're currently using. We'll try to keep it updated. We'll add that to the show notes. So that'll be a good excuse to go to YouTube and see the show notes there. Why don't you subscribe while you're over there? We got a ton of stuff coming up on YouTube over the next few months. And also on iTunes. For those of you listening on iTunes or on anywhere on a phone where you're, just listening to audio, we would love a review from you guys. That helps get the word out and lets people know that the podcast is back and better than ever. You could write that. I'm not putting words in your mouth. You could write that.
Nick said to write, the podcast is better than ever.
Love the podcast, don't like the thumbnail.
Yeah, and then continue to yell at us about the thumbnail until that's fixed. And I think we got to roll, make it a little bit of a fast one today. Chris, you got some dentist. You just got to check up. Is everything
dentist.
okay?
Yep, regular checkup.
You been flossing?
Yeah, a lot of flossing going on in this household.
Is that with an N or a G? Flossing.
Flossing.
I think that's
right,
the new catchphrase.
Man, yeah, I gotta go floss right now, guys. Thank you for stopping by. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned next week. And check out last week's if you haven't already. Thank you so much for coming by the podcast. And let's say bye and happy Monday, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Have a good week.
Happy Monday. Bye.
Bye.